Well, hello, everyone. This is Wendy Rose Williams, and welcome to the Waking Up Spiritually podcast. We're so glad you could join us today, either live in our Facebook group, which is also called Waking Up Spiritually, or catching us on the podcast apps or via our website, which is wakingupspiritually.com, or on our YouTube channel. So I'm a past life adventure guide, and what I do is help people release energy that doesn't serve them anymore. Examples include pain, anxiety, and depression. And when we get freed up of that crud that is just so hard to shed at times, we're able to live that life that's filled with purpose and feel a lot happier and healthier in our bodies. And I'd like to introduce Gregg Kirk, my co-host, and he's going to introduce today's topic. And again, welcome. We're so glad you joined us.
Yes, glad to be seeing you all here today. I'm Gregg Kirk. I have a website, greggkirk.com. It's spelled GREGGKIRK.com. I do a number of things. I do energy work, both remote and in person, using tuning forks. I run an online group healing circle every Sunday afternoon. And that group is growing and growing, and we're starting to do fire circles. So we're going to be doing these group healing circles in person around a fire, in outdoors, obviously. So,
oh, that's great.
Yeah, so we're doing a little experimentation. We got some messages from the guides a while ago that that was a way to proceed. So everybody's feeling excited about it. So obviously, we've got people from all over the country participating. So right now, it's going to be just a small group in person doing it, but maybe eventually we'll start doing streaming, and we'll see what happens. So that's exciting stuff. So and it's funny because we just did the session earlier today at noon Eastern time, and the information that was coming through in our online group healing via Zoom was a lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about today. This Great Awakening symptoms and so forth. So without further ado, let me start sharing.
And Gregg, just one more comment while you're bringing that up. That makes so much sense to work with the element of fire. That's one of the things I always do in my sessions with clients, is help them balance and make sure that their fire and water and earth and air is balanced in their bodies, along with their chakras working well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's very cool that you're going to do that.
Yeah, that was the info we got. Was it's great to be working through an energy, and obviously these online group healing circles started during the height of the pandemic. So it started off as a remote way for people to join, and they have been doing great. But now at this point, the guys are like, okay, now do things in purpose, do things in person using earth elements. So, and one of the things they showed me as the information was coming in is this idea of a ceremony in a circle around a flame in particular it goes across all kinds of indigenous societies. So it's not just, we tend to think
all
of
cultures worldwide.
Yeah, yeah. And the idea is, what they said is you're creating a magical situation. So when you chant or sing and move in a circle around a flame, that creates something special, and the opportunity for magical things, healing, whatever you want, starts to happen. So that when that came through, I think it pushed all the buttons that people needed to have pushed to say, yes, this sounds like a lot of fun, and we're going to take it seriously. It's almost like a sacrament that we'll be doing, but hey, we also are going to have fun with it. So I'll report back if anything pertinent happens that we need to talk about here. But today, in general, the information that's been coming through these circles, and of course through Wendy and me with our healing work, is this idea called the Great Awakening. And I'm going to clarify it in a minute, but just in general, to set up the discussion, we started this group, Waking Up Spiritually, because of the individual awakenings that both Wendy and I had, and that we noticed other people were having. If you take a step back, it's happening pretty much on a mass level. Probably not like at any other time in recent memory. So anyway, let's get into this idea. So we'll be talking about what is an awakening in particular. And I seem to remember one of our first episodes was about, your what to do about your awakening and so forth. And maybe we'll review a little bit about what our advice was with that. And then of course, the Great Awakening, what is that and what is it not? This other idea of power versus force that Dr. David Hawkins introduced back in 1996 with his book, Power versus Force. And then I'll relate some of my personal experiences, and Wendy will relate hers and give some great perspectives on how to proceed, with your own individual awakening, as well as noticing others who are awakening and also others who are not, and how to best way to respond to that situation. So do you have anything to add to that, Wendy?
No, that's a great setup. Thank you, Gregg.
Okay, fantastic. So what is an awakening? It's when disillusionment with daily circumstances, like things you may notice in your school, your work, interactions with government or trusted institutions, church, medical industry, whatever, just things that in the past you just trusted without thinking about it. And then all of a sudden you'll have a brush where you think, wait a minute, this isn't what I believed. I thought these people have my best interest in mind. And now I'm seeing some things that are kind of counter to that. And so it makes you start to question what you've learned and realize that there is possibly a reality beyond what you've been taught. So that's just the first step, just kind of looking beyond just acceptance of your daily life. I think most people go through an experience of questioning to some degree anyway, but the ones who are having awakenings are, as the veil gets pulled back a little more, you start to question more things. And this goes, so this goes into things that we've been told in the past are not real, paranormal experiences like interactions with UFOs or seeing UFOs, interactions with spiritual beings, psychic moments, and any other unexplained phenomena, what would be called miracles. In a lot of cases, we've been taught that these things are not real. And I think in general, we believe them not to be real, or that they only happen during the times of the Bible or something, things like that. Well, miracles only happened when Jesus was around. But that's, you might have had I had a girl I dated years ago. And she said to me, because I owned a magazine, we were writing about ghost stories. And she said, well, I don't believe in ghosts, but I saw one, which, it was hard for me to understand what that meant. How do you
reconcile that statement?
Right. But she had an experience where she was doing some meditating in an attic in a house that she was renting in Maryland, right on the Mason-Dixon border. And this man suddenly appeared. Said his name was Jacob. He had the appearance of an African-American man, but his skin was very light. And he said his name was Jacob, and that his master had strangled him. And that, so in other words, he was a ghost explaining that he had died of a trauma. And so this was something that she still didn't believe. That, in other words, like you could call it programming, was still so ingrained in her rational mind that even though she experienced a ghost, she still didn't believe they existed. So interesting. These kinds of things, these experiences, and these awakening symptoms of maybe everything isn't what it seems to be, can cause a rift with your friends and your family and your loved ones. And it's pretty much a natural part of your awakening, where you need, if you want to continue down your path of awakening, you have to leave some people behind, because you can't operate in that mindset anymore and be true to yourself. And you'll start to make new friends who are having similar experiences. So before I move on, Wendy, is there anything you want to?
Yes, I think just going within and learning to discern what's true for you. I mean, yes, we need our logical, rational mind. We're not saying throw that all out the window. That's certainly not the message, but just be willing to take in the experiences and the information, and how do you feel about it? Like, put your hand over your heart, take a couple breaths. What do you really feel about it, and what do you intuitively know is true for you, so that you get that discernment more finely honed, so that you're not just following some party line, being the independent thinkers, but still being able to consider others, because we certainly don't live alone on the planet. There's many other people, and there's also this beautiful planet herself, as well as the animals, and there's just so many other considerations.
Right.
So,
No, that's great advice to kind of use your intuition or your heart to kind of lead you through this experience versus your rational mind. And like you said, your rational mind's there to help you in your daily, comings and goings. But for the big decisions in your life, it's always best to kind of be introspective about it. So let's move on. What is a great awakening? So I'm defining it as when a growing percentage of the general population begins to have similar realizations and shifts in beliefs. So this is not to be, there's actually something that was called the Great Awakening in the 1740s in the United States when the Puritans came to the US, and there was this kind of religious revival. It was a Protestant revival. So it was a breaking away from, the old school church, the Anglican church or the Catholic church. And these Puritans had, they came to the United States for religious freedom. That's what was going on then. So that was just a short period of time. There's also currently something going on called the Q Anon Movement, where it is a group of people who are, it's been politically charged recently. It started off as being a group that was, pointing to the idea that there's a secret government in the United States. And there's two presidents that warned about that. One of them was Dwight Eisenhower, who warned about the military-industrial complex. And actually, John F. Kennedy gave a famous speech at a college. I don't remember the college, but he warned of the shadow government. So there's a shadowy hand that influences government. So anyway, that's something. But this QAnon group has turned into something else, and it's been politicized. And they are claiming to be a part of the Great Awakening. And we're not talking about that. This is not so much a political thing. This is more of a spiritual thing. And we want to stay out of politics. I think Wendy would agree with that in general when it comes to this
absolutely
idea. But the Great Awakening has more to do with your personal situation in terms of what you feel is right or wrong, and moving through love towards the planet, towards other people, and that kind of thing. Versus the opposite of that, which, So anyway, back in 2012, the Pew Research Center, this made national news. I remember when this was happening back in 2012, that it reported that the number of Americans who do not identify with any religion increased from 15% in 2007 to 20% in 2012. And I believe that number has gone up. And it started a little mini revolution of a group of people who said they were spiritual but not religious. So in other words, they believed in a higher being and believed in a God, but they didn't believe it in the context of any religion. And I believe at this point that group has been compromised as well. Like, people are calling them New Age and whatever. But I think it was healthy at that moment in time for people to say, hey, maybe these religions have been around for a long time. There's a lot of great things about these religions, but there's been these systems that have been created around them that are really there to perpetuate the systems and not about helping humanity and so forth. It's a cloudy world, believe me, because there's great things that some of these churches and religions are doing, but on the other hand, there's a lot of corruption. You involve a lot of people, you involve money, and you involve power, and you get this recipe for corruption. So I grew up in a family where we were raised as Protestants, and it's interesting what happened in my family. my two brothers reacted to the dogma of the church. You know, we were kind of not given a choice. We had to go to Sunday school and vacation Bible school in the summer and things like that. And it's interesting the reactions that my brothers had, where they hated it so much. They were reacting to the dogma pretty much, and they just have decided to either become agnostic or atheist, because they believed if that's what God is, I don't believe in it wholesale, full stop. And my reaction was, I kept reading about this guy named Jesus and his ideas that he had, and the things that he said were amazing. Most of the other stuff I didn't like. You know, I was with my brothers on all that stuff. Like, I don't like this stuff that they make you do, and all these prayers they make you learn, and you know, I don't know, just all the trappings around the church never appealed to me. But I thought, what if they just created a book outside the Bible, you know, where it was just Jesus's sayings? And years later, I got my wish. I found it. It's there's books, you know, found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Apocrypha in particular. There's one book called the Book of Thomas, which is just quotes from Jesus. And it's, you know, they're not included in the traditional Bible. And you know, I think there's a reason for that, because in some of the quotes, Jesus says things like, the kingdom of heaven is within you, and I'm here to lead by example and to show you, you know, you can do these things even better than me someday, you know, if you try. And, you know, just amazing, empowering statements. Those are not the kinds of things you tend to see, you know, in any books of the Bible. It's especially how they're preached in a lot of the Catholic churches it's, you know, you need a savior. You're born into sin. You're a worthless person here on earth. You can only reach paradise and heaven. It's just all these I took them as disempowering ideas. And I just liked what Jesus said. So anyway, that's my personal kind of mini awakening moment, I think, when I was maybe 5 or 6 years old. And then finally, there's a couple of other just kind of larger things that have been pointing to this idea. So where I'm trying to get to here is, it seems to be about in the past 20, 30 years, there's been more of a collection of people who are saying, hey, there's something else going on. You know, I'm not looking to the church anymore. I'm not looking to, you know, for my spiritual pursuits, and maybe not even to my governments for help either, because also during this time around 2012, there was a huge thing, the Arab Spring. So it was a number of, so this wasn't just happening in the world of Christianity, but the Arabs in several countries, and I may be getting the dates wrong, but it just happened within I believe the past 10 years. And, you know, we can correct this if I'm getting it wrong, but there were several Arab countries that were kind of waking up together saying, hey, our governments are very corrupt. And then they tended to be, you know, religious governments. So there was this situation of, you know, religion and government working together to, you know, let's face it, they were not allowing the people to do a lot of things, reducing the freedom. So the people revolted en masse. And, you know, that was an interesting period of time too. I remember feeling myself like I was cheering for these countries, like, wow, you know, like Egypt was one of them, like, wow, you know, this is a country that was an amazing powerhouse, you know, thousands of years ago with technology and spirituality and so forth. And they've really kind of, you know, haven't seemed to progress that far like that. You know, I don't know. And I hope I don't sound like I'm making judgments, but it was just an interesting thing that this country was just all waking up and en masse and saying, we are putting down this corruption. So also going on was the Mayan calendar long count prediction that a lot of people were predicting it was going to be the end of the world on December 21st, 2012. Others were saying it was going to be a great awakening and so forth. But this, you know, this is all matches with the timing of all these things happening. And it also matches with the Law of One, which was written back in 1985, where these, you know, these non-physical beings came in to these people who were channeling them, asking them questions. And they basically said the same thing the Mayan calendar said. It was right around this period of time, give or take 10 years, around 2012, you know, give or take 10 years, there's going to be this change. And it was more dire. They were basically saying every 25,000 years there's this extinction cycle, or what they were calling harvest, where all these beings would actually move up in frequency, but it might involve death, and so it was kind of a dire prediction. But anyway, so let me stop there, because there's another slide that will kind of piggyback on all of these ideas. But is there anything you want to speak to at this point, Wendy?
Yes, I think that was a misinterpretation. It was simply the end of the Mayan long calendar. It wasn't meant to be the end of the world, unless you're looking at it as the end of a time period. And if you bring astrology into it, it makes perfect sense, because there was a 2,000-year cycle that changed, and we entered an age of Aquarius starting in 2012, and had not been there for 2,000 years. And if you look at what's happening with the divine feminine, and just some of the changes that are going on, you can just see some major rising up in the collective, because I think we're talking about the collective consciousness or mass consciousness when we talk about a great awakening. But it just brings fear when it's change that people don't understand and aren't prepared for, and feel they can't control. And control's an illusion. When we start to surrender, life goes an awful lot better. So I think it was just a lot of those changes going on.
Right. Yeah, and it lines up with this other slide here that I'm going to show you, which is so in 1995, Dr. David Hawkins wrote an amazing book called Power versus Force. I know a little bit about the background of it. He claims to have been visited by a being who just went into his body for years, kind of raised his vibration, prompted him to write this book. And at the same time, he found out about the idea of muscle testing, or kinesiology, where he was a professor at a college, and he did this experiment where he gave out a room full of 200 students little packets. Each had white powder in them, which sounds like it would be a bad idea, but one set had vitamin C in it, and the other packet had saccharin, which is not good for you. And they were they found out that saccharin is actually cancer causing. So they just randomly put it out, to the group. Some had vitamin C, some had saccharin. So they did muscle testing on them. So they didn't tell anybody what was what. And for those of you who don't know what muscle testing is, one of the easiest ways to do it is you stick your arm out, you hold the packet up to your chest, and then somebody comes along with 2 fingers around your wrist and just tries to push it down. Now, that sounds like, wow, how would that ever not get pushed down? Now, anybody should be able to stop 2 fingers from going down, but this is a magical thing about kinesiology. If you put something up to your chest that is not good for you, it's actually very easy for somebody to push your arm down. And that is it's like I've called it before, like can't think of the word, the lie detector test from the universe. So it's kind of like that. There's kind of no way around it. So anyway, with 100% accuracy, they found all the saccharin packets and the vitamin C packets throughout the group of 200 patients, or not patients, but students. And Dr. Hawkins said, well, this is what he wrote his book, and he said, I'm going to muscle test every paragraph in the book. So for truth. And he said, yeah, he did the best he could. It's about 90% accurate. He couldn't get it all the way for some reason. I don't know why, but anyway, he developed this idea through kinesiology and through the channeling he was getting, this map of human consciousness, which is one of the most amazing things I've ever heard about or seen, which is from a vibrational standpoint, he has mapped human emotions and some of the traits around those emotions and behaviors, starting with 0 being the lowest, going up to 20, which is shame, 30, which is guilt, 50 with his apathy, moves all the way up to 175 is pride, and then it crosses. So all of from pride down to shame, those are force. In other words, you're forcing your way through life. Like you were saying earlier, Wendy, you think you have control of life, so you're viewing it in a very 3D perspective, very tribal, very animalistic. It's what, and forcing your way through life. When you get up to 200, you're into the courage, and then as you travel further, all the way up into love is at 500, joy at 540, peace at 600, and then from 700 to 1000, it's enlightenment. And I've seen some fascinating things on YouTube of some people who had the ability to do this kind of rating and muscle testing on, beings, like Jesus and Buddha and other people, and who tested up around 1000. And so that's kind of the goal, is get way up there. You're an avatar if you're up around 700 to 1000. But the interesting thing, after writing about all this, Hawkins started kind of monitoring where we are as a human race. At what level has the world on a collective scale been vibrating? And he noticed that we had been in the force range for years and years, but in 1992, we kind of hopped the bump and went up into courage at 200. And 1992 was the inflection point, which is, it's 20 years before 2012, which is interesting. So we had, this bit of a runway to get ready for, something going on in 2012. And now so anyway, this rating has gone up. I don't know where it is today, but I thought this was fascinating, and definitely worth mentioning in a presentation where we're talking about a mass awakening. This is almost like the scientific rating of where
I was just going to say, to have this sort of data around it and this sort of a study, it's fantastic.
Yeah. So highly recommend the book if you're interested. He goes into a lot of things, but his map of human consciousness is probably one of his greatest contributions to humanity. I mean, I don't think I'm overblowing it. I think it's fantastic, and it kind of gives you a good way of like something to strive for. I just want to say one thing about the book. He gave a really interesting analogy about how you will see the world differently as you're vibrating through these different ratings. So he said, imagine, if you will, a homeless man on the street corner, and imagine it's a homeless man in your neighborhood, just like down the street from you, and your reaction to it will tell you where you are in your reaction to this man will tell you where you are in your spirituality. So he would say, if your reaction is, oh my God, this man's going to make our neighborhood look bad. If he stays there, it's going to drive down property values. It's going to make us look like our neighborhood's a bad neighborhood. So that is down at around 30, like the guilt, the shame, 20. And then maybe you go up a little more, you get angry, like, I wish this guy would get out of here. We got to get this guy out of here. Screw this guy. He's making us look bad. Now you're up to 150, anger. And then, maybe you'll feel like, well, maybe I want to help this person. I feel sorry for this person, but maybe I can help out. Now you're moving up into things like willingness, acceptance, and reason, and even love, all the way up to 500. The final stage, though, was very interesting, where what Hawkins said, the reaction that you'll know you're spiritually enlightened is when you have this reaction, which is, I am that man. In other words, there's no separation between me and that man. We're all part of the creation. And, that basically I don't need to help him. He's on his path. We're both on our path together, and I love him, which I thought was fascinating. So you see the range that we're all going through. So just
that's incredible. That's great. You walked us through an example like that to make it real.
Yeah. So just think about that in your daily life, things you're going through. a lot of us have kind of like reflexive reactions to things that we come across in our lives, but you can adjust it, and you can move your way up the thermometer here of power versus force. So yeah, so let's move on. So I just have a few, Wendy and I have talked a lot about our own personal experiences and so forth, and so I'll just mention a few of mine because I want to hear Wendy's. So, how did I know I was waking up? And I had a long kind of trajectory on this. I started having these mild, maybe supernatural moments or psychic moments. And I think we all have them to a degree where, your phone rings and you're thinking about somebody and oh, look, that's who I was thinking about. Those are little intuitive moments that start to happen maybe more often or whatever. But, I had a full-blown psychic moment that I talked about in one of our Miracles and magic episodes where I was in the middle of a dream, and then somebody like tuned into my dream, a good friend of mine who we'd been having a falling out. And then I saw this vision of her, telling me to call her and to contact her. And I remember calling it at the time. It was like call waiting, for those of you, this is before cell phones. If you remember what call waiting was, you'd be on a phone line and you would hear a click, and it meant somebody was trying to call you, and you could click the phone and cut over to the other line. That's the way it was in my dream. It was like I was having this dream, but she was trying to, intercede in my dream. And anyway, so she did, and I called her up and I said, hey, I was thinking about you. And I said, I had this dream that you were crying and telling me to call you. And then she was silent. She said, well, I did that last night. And then I just had this moment of where I was like, I think I could tell you what you were wearing, so I was able to describe what she was wearing. And, some startling things, like I'd never seen her wear glasses. And I said, the weird thing is you were wearing glasses. And she said, oh yeah, I only wear them at night. I never wear them out. So you've never seen me, but I do wear them. So there was some really good confirmations.
What validity. That's really amazing.
Right. So when you get those kind of hits like that, and this is me, the period of my life where I'm not thinking about anything spiritual. I'm very entrenched in my daily comings and goings, and not even interested in anything like this. So when it happened, it was more or less like an amusement of mine, but I never forgot it. I thought, wow, do I have this ability? Am I able to hear and see things? But, I went for years without really paying it any mind and not really having anything like that for quite a while, until, I took a Reiki class maybe 2-3 years later, and I had some kind of supernatural moments in that. But the thing that really precipitated an awakening for me was, I'm calling it a disease portal. And this is again.
That's a great term. I want to hear more about that. That's a fascinating expression.
Right. So you and I have talked about, shake you to wake you kind of things that your guides will do, right? We've had a few episodes where we mentioned this, and you've gone through some of them yourself, where they were on the outset looked like disastrous things happening to you physically. What was really going on was,
or financially or emotionally or whatever it might be.
Anything that takes you way out of your comfort zone, where it's pointing you into a different direction in your life that is very disruptive. So, I equated it to my life burning to the ground. So I got diagnosed with Lyme disease, and then just started going down and down and down, had some life-threatening situations happening to me during treatment. And a lot of my relationships were really burned up. Things I enjoyed in my life, I couldn't do anymore. Foods I couldn't eat. I couldn't drink alcohol. Various other things like that. My mobility was reduced. I couldn't do much. I had no energy. All of the pursuits that made up the rich fabric of my life prior to that were just taken away. And I just thought, I was losing my identity. It got down to that. I was losing who I was as a person. And I don't know what it was, but I just had this weird psychic moment, or, just intuitive hit at that point of, maybe that person needed to die. that person, and then a new person needed to be reborn, more or less. And that all this needed to burn down. My life needed to burn down. And then this whole idea of an analogy of, hey, forest fires are good for forests, and that's what's happening to you, burning away all the dead wood, leaving room for new growth. Like all this came flooding in of like, this is actually a good thing for you. This disease is pointing you towards a completely different life. And that I can't, I know that, well, I help Lyme disease patients now. So there's a lot, maybe some of you are listening and you can relate to what I'm talking about. And I just want to give you some hope that it's actually a good thing. You're being pointed in a better direction, even though you might be in the, severe moments of pain and anguish and losing hope and so forth. If you just keep going, you will, the path will be revealed and everything gets better. I mean, my life got better. My health got better than it was before Lyme disease, which is insane. Because, I used to talk to people and I would say things like, if I could just be the way I was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And I had a few people just kind of slap me, mentally and say, why would you want to go backwards? You can be better. You always have the opportunity to be better. So, I thought of the $6 Million Man, that TV show where they said, we can rebuild him and make him better than he was. I'm like, that's what I'm doing. Luckily, I'm less expensive than him, but but not too far off. I mean, my God, it costs so much money to get through Lyme disease. But anyway, so that was it. During the tail end of my experiences there, I started having massive awakenings, supernatural experiences, abilities to heal, psychic, all this kind of stuff started just opening up to me. And it was so clear at that point, like, wow, I really don't want to be the way I was 10 years ago. Thank God I'm on this new path and living this new life. And oh my God, I'm so grateful. So I wrote a book called The Gratitude Curve, basically described it. But that was really the whole disease portal, the portal meaning a doorway, and it can take you up or down. It can make you bitter or better. And it's completely your choice, completely. So it was literally door one or door two, Gregg. Do you want to go, do you want to be bitter or do you want to be better? And believe me, I was choosing the bitter path for quite a while. I was pissed off at a lot of things in my life, at doctors and people around me trying to tell me, oh, you don't know what to do. Here, have you tried this treatment? Overzealous people trying to help me, all that kind of stuff. God bless them. They had their, the heart's in the right place, but they would spend, 15 minutes reading about Lyme disease. Have you tried this antibiotic? I'm like, well, yeah, I spent a year on that actually. So thanks a lot, but no. So that was the bitter approach. The better approach was just, hey, I'm just going to leave this in my rearview mirror. I'm going to take some treatments, but I'm going to spend more time on my spiritual life and not holding on to things, on letting all of this go, on putting things in my rearview mirror and start making plans toward my future. And I found out that was the way I got out of the hole. I just started planning towards things I wanted to do and surrounding myself with pursuits that I enjoyed. So I just on a microcosm level, I noticed one day, my wife and I watched a comedian, and during the entire hour, this was in my sickest of Lyme disease, where I had daily pain and fatigue. We watched this comedian for an hour, and we were still laughing when the show was over. And I said something out loud. It just blurted out of my mouth. I said, I forgot I was sick the whole time I was laughing so much. And then I was like, wait a minute, I forgot I was sick. How did
there you go? Laughter is the best medicine. There's that expression.
Right.
Because you raised your vibration.
Yes. It changed my physical chemistry. I had endorphins coursing through my body instead of pain and cortisol. So it was like, wow, that is medicine. That is a real thing. And I noticed it with music, the same thing. I would listen to an entire album of music that I enjoyed, and I would just be buzzing from it. And so I started to realize, wow, I can affect my daily mood and so forth. And that will move me through life instead of, it's like walking through life with ankle weights. If you're just looking around at things that piss you off and kind of keeping a diary of your daily pain and things that are going wrong in your life. Well, I hear a lot of people doing that. Here's how are you doing? The people, do you know the people? You say, hey, how are you doing? Oh, well, there's always 5 things wrong with them or something, and they're walking around with ankle weights on. And whereas get those weights off and just like forget it. How are you doing? I'm doing great. I'm not just doing fine. I'm doing great. And let's talk about what I'm doing tomorrow. Or, did you know next week I'm doing this? Yeah. That's how I got out of it. So anyway, it was a massive teaching, a lesson. It's still informing my life today. And, so God bless that I was able to work through it. And that, I realized it for what it was, the gift and the lesson, the teaching. So throughout the course of that was a healthy dose of belief destruction that went on, healthy dose of it. In fact, I think it's important for people to go through belief destruction as you're going through your spiritual awakening.
What were some of the beliefs that you let go of and released and found were just not true for you anymore, Gregg?
This may trigger some people, but that doctors could help me. With Lyme disease, it's almost impossible to find a good doctor who understands what you're going through or who knows what to do about it. So there are some good doctors. To find a doctor who can diagnose you, that's great. But the doctor who diagnosed me, instead of telling me literally I was crazy and saying I needed to see a psychiatrist, I had plenty of those doctors. I had plenty of other doctors who said the symptoms weren't life-threatening, so I needed to learn to live with them. All these things. And I'm like, wait a minute, these doctors are not even curious about my illness and what I'm going through. The doctor who diagnosed me just started pouring antibiotics and pharmaceuticals at me. And when one didn't work, I get another one. So I was on Adderall because I complained of fatigue. Adderall is a methamphetamine. It's basically a controlled speed. And then opioids. I complained of pain. They threw opioids at me, and then multiple pharmaceuticals for years. So most people understand that if you're on antibiotics for especially more than 3 months, you're just destroying your gut, your immune system, and that's what happened. I just had disastrous stuff. So I went to all these doctors. I revered them. I went to some what's called Lyme literate doctors. So these are doctors who supposedly know about Lyme disease, and they charged me $1,000 per visit. And I found that they really didn't know much more. I at least knew enough during this period of time that I had to be my own health advocate. So I was doing all this research about, the disease and the fact that it's, multi-pathogenic. In other words, it's not just one bacteria, it's multiple things. It's viruses, it's parasites. So I bring that information into some of these doctors, and their response would be like I was intimidating them, like they didn't know about it. And they would belittle me and berate me, kick me out of their offices in some situations. I would get into these arguments. So here I'm in the heat of my illness, and I was so tired and sick, and now I'm wasting my time arguing with doctors. And so the way I got better with Lyme disease was by leaving doctors, which turned my world upside down. Because we're in a society where we trust doctors quite a bit. But I will have to say, in terms of chronic illness, it is very common for doctors not to know what to do. It's to the point now where I've talked to more than 1,000 people, not just Lyme patients, but other patients as well, who have gone through things, any kind of chronic illness. And the doctors just, they've been trained in a certain band of knowledge, a certain band of solutions. It usually involves surgery or some sort of pharmaceuticals. And if, you don't get better after being treated with that stuff, they have nothing for you. They literally do. Many of the doctors said to me, I don't know what else to do now, which, that'll destroy some beliefs. When a doctor tells you, I don't know what to do, that's shocking. So it's a cliche in the Lyme world where, I talk to Lyme patients every day because I run a foundation where they come to me and they get started on the story, and they're like, it took me 20 years to be diagnosed. And then once I was diagnosed, they threw all these different things at me and nothing worked. I'm like, stop. I've heard it too many times. I already know what you're going to say. So anyway, that was my big belief destruction. But there were other things as well. But that's enough. I don't want to wax on too much about that. But and then of course, joining with others like-minded with you is a really, I believe it's an important thing, because you start to feel alone. When you start having these experiences that other people aren't having, the general population. It's great to know. And this is one of the good things about social media, which definitely has some bad things about it, but some good things is you find people, like-minded people, and it's good to.
You can find your tribe, even though it may be very, very specific.
Yes, yeah. So depending on what your experience is, they've got a flavor of it out there on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. But it's good to not feel like you're the only one, like you're a freak or something going through these things. And, especially with, if you've had some really intense things like a UFO abduction or some sort of manifestation in your house from a spiritual being, those are strong, powerful things to happen to certain people. And it can make you think you're losing your mind. But lo and behold, guess what? Other people are experiencing these things as well, and they're not crazy. You can, there's so many people now on YouTube talking about these things, and you can see they're rational people having these paranormal experiences, and it's really encouraging to hear them and to listen to their truth and to hear it in the sincerity in their voices. And it's happening like I've never seen before. These amounts of people having these kinds of experiences. So anyway, well, enough on me, Wendy.
I would just like to add to that, Gregg, when you were talking about the disease portal, it was just very powerful because, as you said, it's the example of the controlled of control of forests and of tree growth, et cetera, and using fire. So, I mean, think about getting a really high temperature in your body. That's your body burning up something that's not serving you. But when you first started talking about that disease portal, I don't know if you saw, I don't know which episode or which film it was of Harry Potter, but Harry goes in to see Professor Dumbledore, and the phoenix that's in the cage next to Professor Dumbledore's desk is like on its last gasp. And it bursts into flames just because it's had its life cycle. We're talking about cycles. We're talking about life cycles in a lot of ways here. And it just bursts into flames. And poor Harry's like, oh my gosh, I killed my professor's bird. He thinks it's his fault. And just in a short amount of time, this beautiful little egg cracks open and the new phoenix is working its way out of it. So it's like coming out of its portal, so to speak.
Yeah, right.
And coming out of that eggshell, and it's just all shiny and new. And it's just all as it's meant to be. So it's just
the phoenix analogy is definitely goes with the burning
Phoenix,
up and renewal. Yeah.
Yes, because Phoenix energy, I mean, that's a true energy. I mean, you can learn about phoenixes, you can meditate, you can just do things to bring up more of that energy in yourself, because we do go through these cycles and it doesn't feel good sometimes when a cycle is ending. Sometimes it's quick and easy and you're like, oh, I'm ready to move on from that. And you just feel like you're progressing in a good way. But other times it's like, oh my goodness, I was not ready for that to go away, particularly if it's the 1, 2, 3 punch of a whole bunch of things that you enjoyed or were comfortable with or depended on go away all at once. Like the clients that come to me and they're like, I'm in the midst of a divorce and that means I'm going to have to move. So I'm losing my home. I'm going to need to change my career and we have to figure out custody. And it's just, so much all at once. Or someone who's had a mate pass on or a parent pass on or whatever it might be. Some people view it as just these beautiful opportunities, and others it's just feeling like the end of the world to them. So it's just really interesting that the differences of how people are able to work with that.
Definitely.
So thanks for sharing those experiences.
Thank you. Let's hear some of yours.
Yes. So, what really got things going for me, because I was not paying attention to my energy, my spirituality, it just was not on my radar until a little over 10 years ago. And what came up for me, it was the guides, the shake you to wake you, because they just weren't getting my attention, or it hadn't been my time. So I had a really significant soulmate reunion, and uh, I don't want to use the word unfortunately. It felt like unfortunately at the time, after about a year in. It clearly was very karmic, meaning we had a lot of past life energy that we needed to release that just wasn't serving us, that wasn't fun, that wasn't easy. And it would just bleed over into nowadays. Like he would look at me and say, I don't trust you. And I know that's wrong. I know that's crazy. I know that makes no sense because you're incredibly trustworthy and you've done nothing to make me not trust you. But I can feel it like deep in my bones that it's old energy.
Yeah.
So that sort of thing. So that was an important part of my wake up call. And that became my first book, Regression Healing 1, when I did a session for my former boyfriend, and he became the client. And it just was a beautiful ending of a cycle because he'd introduced me to Journey of Souls, and I didn't know what past life regression was. And he was the one who had been studying. He had maxed out men's group and studying the Bible and everything through church, and was just very knowledgeable, but didn't feel like it was giving him the answers anymore. So he had struck out on this course for about 10 years or so of what can I learn spiritually that's like the bigger picture, and had been looking at Buddhism and had been looking at all different types of things. So he introduced me to Michael Newton's Journey of Souls. And for those who are not familiar with that book, it's a culmination of Dr. Newton's most interesting client cases over his 30 or 40-year career. And he was a psychologist. He was a therapist who did not believe in past lives, thought it was a bunch of bohunky and just totally silly new age stuff. I believe he was either atheist or agnostic himself personally. But what he started noticing was he had clients, he had patients who were going back when he would tell them, well, okay, let's find the origin of this pain or this feeling of loneliness. Why do you always feel alone? More than the typical, much more than the typical, because we can all feel alone at times, part of the human condition. But someone that's just perpetually feeling that, even though they might have some great relationships. So he just had clients who were going back spontaneously, and he realized they were getting incredible results like that. Once they found the past life point of origin, it was resolved. And he also found that across these 7,000 or so it's a pretty big study if you look at all the patients that he worked with over his entire career. It didn't matter what religion they were, what gender, what age, socioeconomic status, what their beliefs were. They described the same types of experiences of being eternal souls, of going home to the light in between incarnations and that sort of thing. So when I read that book, it was like I literally felt the earth move. It was just one of those moments of, I could just hear all around me, truth, 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 truth. I didn't need to muscle test. It was just so there for me. So that led me to going and having my own past life regression. And then a year later, having a Life Between Lives session, which is an even deeper, it's a 4-hour, very deep level of hypnosis where you go back to the womb in this lifetime and to learn what it was like to be a soul that was coming together with that little tiny fetus, and why you chose that particular body, and why you chose those parents, why you chose the time and place of your birth. I mean, that's just mind-blowing if you can consider for even a moment, what if we chose it all along? What if we could let go of, oh, this is being done to me, and I can't believe my bad luck, and these, rich people, these beautiful people, these talented people, pick whatever category the person might be feeling some jealousy regarding, thinking that they've, got it all easy and so perfect, and just everything handed to them. I really dislike that expression. So what if instead we're choosing different lifetimes and very, very different experiences? And what if we all do that? So just the epiphanies that started coming to me through doing those sessions, when I could hear my own higher self on the recording. And I knew it was not what I'd call everyday Wendy, because the voice was just slower and deeper and kinder and so much more wise. It just was incredible to hear that soul wisdom coming through from myself. So that just really hooked me. It's like, oh, I need more of this. This is the good stuff. And for instance, that first Life Between Lives session that I had with a Michael Newton therapist back in, would have been 2012, I chose to transcribe my recording. I typed it. I literally typed every word of it. It was 65 pages of information. So, and it was so helpful. It was so useful. And a way to look at it in psychology is it's a gentle, appropriate tapping into the subconscious. Because if you think of our conscious self or our conscious knowledge as being the little tip of the iceberg above the water level, well, we know there's so much more below. And we don't want to access all of it. Oh my gosh, the ultimate too much information. But we want to access that wisdom. At least I do, and my clients do. So looking for that distilled wisdom is just a big deal. So that was a big part of my wake-up call, was to know that these sorts of sessions existed. And they were so helpful for me that I went on and became a past life regressionist myself. I trained and became a hypnotherapist myself because my own first sessions were so life-changing. And I went on a big journey. I read hundreds of books. Luckily, I'm a good fast reader. There's the advantage of having been an English major way back when, and I retain it and process it well. But just literally went through hundreds and hundreds of books, and also started looking for, how can I learn myself more? How do I change these belief systems and let go of the pain, let go of the fear? How do I clear out the junk? Take that trash out to the dumpster at the curb. And I did it by working with a lot of different practitioners. So for instance, I had an astrologer do my birth chart and look at what was my life path, what was my life plan, what did my planet show that I was working on, which of the 12 houses did they fall in? Not surprisingly, most of them fell into the house that's life and death. How perfect is that for a past life regressionist? So most of my planets were there. But it just those sorts of things. I worked with a spiritual numerologist. She helped me figure out what my karma was for, because I knew I had karma weighing me down. And of course, my real impetus was, okay, so how do I learn the lesson? How do I work through it? What are the antidotes? There's got to be some antidotes. So I just was really, really motivated to find those. I worked with angel healers. I had multiple Reiki sessions. I had specific types of psychic readings. I had a Michael teaching reading done. I had eye readings done. I just did so many different types of things, and I didn't do them willy-nilly. I would just like really feel into, is this going to be helpful for me? Like human design. I had a human design reading done. And I just picked the people really carefully. And I was really fortunate because at that point, I was able to hear my guides and I was able to get good recommendations, and I could muscle test. Do I need this session or this reading? Is this the right person? Is this the right time? And I was then able to just save up the money or do a trade with that person, because sometimes I was very fortunate. I was a practitioner, so I could trade sessions with people too. So that's how I had the good fortune of doing a lot of these sessions. And doing all this work over the last 11 years or so, it helped me, it allowed me, is a better word, to integrate and to understand my own near-death experience I'd had back in 1997, because I just didn't know what to make of it. I didn't understand it, and I just didn't know how to peel the onion and figure out what it had been about. And I didn't know about groups like IANS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies. I just hadn't tapped into that information. But learning to meditate, learning to connect with my own guides, and learning that my clairaudience, my ability to hear, is incredible. And I'm very, very grateful for that. And I can hear ascended masters, I can hear angels, I can hear my higher self, I can hear my guides. Sure, I hear my ego too at times. So different, so clear. It's so annoying. It's so, what about this? What about that? It's just really indecision. It's fear provoking. It's negativity. So I just learned, okay, how you can't eradicate your ego. You can't make it go away. And your ego can be helpful if there really is a danger, if there really is a problem. Thank you for saving my life, because the hair on the back of my neck is standing up. And I know I physically need to cross the street right now and get away from that individual or get out of whatever. Thank you for that gift of fear. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your ego being annoying or literally torturing you, because we can have so much negative self-talk from it. So learning the distinctions and the difference of when it's this beautiful, helpful, heart-centered message from your own higher self or from your guides. And it is not that your guides mollycoddle you. Oh gosh, that's my grandfather's word. It's not that they pander to you. It's not like, oh, you always do everything right. You're the greatest. It's not insincere type things. It can be the hard stuff. It can be, you need to get ready to quit your day job. I know you don't want to. I know you're kicking and dragging your feet about this, but there are signs, when you're supposed to make a major change, or when you're supposed to leave a marriage, leave a relationship, or move, or just make some changes. Let the information come through. Just play with it. Look at what would it look like, that sort of thing. And you can get from what's called the Karmic Path, where you're just living a lot of these tough old lessons that haven't been learned and completed. and move on to the Dharmic path, where you've really got that good center going and are able to move on in good ways of raising your vibration. And as Gregg said, for heaven's sakes, watch some comedies, listen to some great music, enjoy that beautiful fresh salad that you took an extra, 5 minutes of time to just make perfect for you, and just enjoy it.
Fantastic. Well, I hear Henley in the background.
Yes, my apologies. How perfect. Her picture is here. She's like, okay, acknowledge the puppy. I've got my audio turned to block out dog barking, and I don't think it works, but I'm doing my best here. I apologize.
It's very
She's
cute.
chiming in.
Yep. Sounds like a walk maybe in your future or something.
Yes, we're going to for a walk into dog training right now.
Oh, okay.
She's like, you told me 1 o'clock.
Right. Well, one thing that strikes me about everything you talk about with your experiences, Wendy, is you became a student of your awakening. It sounds like you dove in. And
I did, because I didn't understand it. It didn't make sense to me. I didn't have any background for it. It didn't fit with anyone in my family. I didn't have any friends on this path. Right. So that's absolutely it. I became the best student I could to try and figure out what my heart was saying.
That's fair. Well, it's I think it's unusual, because most people kind of go through this period of kind of wallowing around, wondering what's going on, listening to others who are saying, oh, you're crazy, you didn't experience that, and then really getting confused about it. I
tried to look for the best information I could find.
Yeah.
It's out there. We can find it.
Right. Yeah. The other thing is the commonality between you and me is we were influenced by a number of books and that have kind of this idea. So Newton's book I have, but the ones that woke me up were Andrew Weiss. He did similar studies. Brian Weiss, yeah, not Andrew Weiss. Brian Weiss. Yeah,
I think that's our next podcast, Gregg, is the 3 books that helped our spiritual awakening the most.
There you go. What a great idea. Yes. So yeah, Brian Weiss, that was the first book I read where, there was somebody who kind of started off in a clinical, and now my dog is barking. So I think it's time for all dogs across the country to go outside. They're all joining together. But anyway, that woke me up to the idea of things outside of just mere hypnotism and the idea of past life healing, from that it was needed. So that was interesting. And then Robert Monroe, his books of, having out-of-body experiences and the fascinating adventures he went on. So those were the ones that kind of woke me up. So it's interesting. That was a major part of your awakening as well. So yes. I recommend it for other people. I'm sure other people are having other books that are kind of helping them, triggering them in a positive way to wake up. So that's great. But what a great idea. Yeah, let's definitely talk about the books that influenced us. That would be a very good topic. So let's conclude for today.
So let's just look at going within. What are some of the best ways to embrace your awakening? Going within, having that daily spiritual practice, and you'll find we did a podcast on that you can look for, and that energy management to raise your vibration and frequency. We've got a 2-part series on energy management. And just be open to having those healing sessions, whether you're able to do them for yourself, whether you work with someone else, whether you do a trade, whether you purchase one. Just be open to doing those, because I find that really helps us heal, first feel, and then heal and release those emotions in a healthy way. Because there's a lot of studies now starting to show, what is disease? Well, guess what? It's stuck emotions, it's stuck energy. So let's just get that all flowing in a more healthy way.
Great advice. So thank you, everyone. No, go ahead, Wendy. Take it over.
Thank you for being here. And please join us the 2nd and 4th Sunday of the month, noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. And we've got our Facebook group linked here, as well as wakingupspiritually.com. And Gregg's website is Gregg with three G's, Gregg, Kirk, KIRK.com, and mine is WendyRoseWilliams.com. So we so look forward to seeing you next time, and have a wonderful, wonderful fall.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.